So this actually happened to one of my friends at the time of this story when he was living in the States. Now he was living somewhere in Florida, so he was living with his parents as he was still trying to find a job and trying to get out of the house as soon as possible. However, he was ended up having to sell a few things. He sold a few things on Craigslist, but this one really takes the prize. He was selling an old chair that had not been used in a while by his family, and his family had been suggesting he pretty much either throws it away or put it on Craigslist and see if anyone would buy it. That's what my friend did. At the time of this story, I am going to refer to him as Michael. Now, Michael sold a few things on Craigslist, and there was something he really sold was that chair. While the chair had been up for a while, he had waited to see if anyone was picking it up. After 2 weeks, he had considered taking the post down, but someone by the name John messaged him. He said he was interested in the chair, so Michael decided to see if he can come over and pick up the chair and have a look at it. The man showed up and he looked at the chair, and after sitting on the chair for a test, he thought that the chair was actually in good condition, especially for an older chair. John had paid Michael the money and he took the chair with him. And Michael was at first very, very calm about it and really enjoyed having the fact that he got made money just because of something off of Craigslist. However, that's when it didn't end. That same John guy had asked Michael whatever he sold, and at first Michael didn't mind selling some of his stuff for money to this John person as he bought it and paid and left. However, something weird started to show up when he asked Michael if he could stay the night. Michael told him that he was feeling uncomfortable by that and to decline it. However, John started spamming his number, and that's when Michael got so frustrated that he ended up blocking the number. However, the story does not end there. One night when he was home alone, Michael woke up to a sound of smashing windows. Turns out someone had broken into his house. He got up and he ended up alerting his parents. That's when his dad came out with a shotgun and started screaming and yelling at the guy to get out of the house, otherwise they called the cops. It turns out that that same John guy was wearing a mask and he apparently wanted to break in after Michael declined his offer. Now, the police arrived, but the man was already gone. So that's when Michael tells his side as to how it all started. As it turns out, John had been breaking into houses for at least a few years now in his area. He had assaulted a few people as well as battery. He was not found, and that makes Michael wonder if this guy is still around. What was John's intentions were to Michael, he absolutely have no idea. The moral of the story goes, be very careful when you're on Craigslist, when selling or buying something from them. You don't know who the person could turn out to be. So one of my aunts had this story happen to one of them, and of course this is definitely one that really takes the cake. I'm gonna call her Charmaine for the sake of this story. Charmaine was living in the States at the time, and she had been looking for a decent sized car. Her other car was starting to get old, so she started looking on Craigslist for anybody selling a used car for a decent price. Some of them apparently were too expensive, some of them weren't really in the best condition. As Charmaine was looking through it, she ended up coming across an ad on Craigslist. Apparently, it seemed to be an older woman who was selling a 2018 Honda Civic. Now, the pictures of it seemed legit, so Charmaine messaged the person saying that she was interested in buying the car. And the seller gave her the address, which happened to be outside of town. Being in the countryside, I did get it. Of course, Charmaine didn't mind the drive. So the next day, she drove there in her old car, which of course was a Toyota Camry. She ended up driving her car there, and when she got there, she ended up walking up to the door and knocking it. Open up was the same woman that she had messaged on Craigslist. She seemed to be maybe in her 50s, maybe early to mid 50s. She seemed pretty chill. Of course, this is when something started to go really, really wrong. Of course, that's when Charmaine was looking at it and asking where the car is. Do you mind coming inside? I need to have you do something. When she said that immediately raised a lot of red flags. Of course, that's when she looks to see that there was the car, but it wasn't anything described on the pictures. It looked rusted and run down, looked like a 1950s car. Obviously, this woman lied about it being a Honda Civic. That's when Charmaine said that she wasn't interested in it anymore. When she said that was when two men grabbed her, but before they could do anything to her, a police officer showed up and of course arrested the men and the woman. Charmaine was grateful that the police officer was nearby and saw what was happening, because if he hadn't, she would have been inside that house and have God knows what done to her. Now, the cop had said that this woman had been doing this for months now, and they finally caught her after being released for good behavior. Now, this was definitely something that made Charmaine pretty much stay away from Craigslist, because whoever that person was that was trying to kidnap her, rob her, or do God knows what, it's really messed up. Still to this day, she even looks back on this thinking what would have happened to her if she went in that house. God only knows what would have planned for her if it was the alternative. This happened to one of my friends named Ainsley at the time of this story. This was sometime back in 2019. Now, she couldn't exactly pinpoint what day it was, but it was sometime in the fall. Now, Ainsley was looking at trying to find some decent deals when she came across what seemed to be a bicycle for sale on Craigslist. It was one of her friend's birthday parties coming up, and she wanted to give him something really special. She contacted the owner, which his name was Danny, and he pretty much just told her to meet him at a certain point. So Ainsley nodded, and she got in her car and ended up driving to where he was meeting her. When she got there, she waited what seemed to be a bit, but have the car being out in the middle of the nowhere, where would he find it? That really makes her wonder. However, that's when things got a little weird, when the guy pulls in the area and he stops. As he stops, he ends up looking over and seeing this girl, and he ended up saying, "You here for the bike?" That's when Ainsley said that she was there for the bike, and of course the guy said, "Can you go reach in the back and get it? I left something in there." Ainsley was starting to feel uncomfortable, knowing that this was a really situation that she wished she didn't get into. The very second she was about to go in, she heard a scream coming from somewhere in the distance. Now, she ended up looking at the man, saying that she wasn't interested anymore, quickly got back in the car, and the man eventually turned around and sped off, never to be seen again. As that man had ran off, Ainsley drove back to the police station, where she filed a report on this man, and it definitely expressed about why he was doing this and stuff. Now, the listing on Craigslist was taken down, but Ainsley knew one thing: he definitely wasn't selling her any bike.